I believe it is.
Yeah. Well, you have your attention. Barbara and I want to tell you what just happened in case you weren't watching. We have, after about 4 months of working in our committee, and we have a great committee. One of the things that we did, I think, Barbara, that others don't do, and that is we bring everybody in and really take care of the complicated things in committee. And when you can do that and come out, as we did on June 24th, for with a unanimous vote, I think it's an accomplishment. And I think this is one of the two most significant bills of the year, the other one being the Defense Authorization Bill. The thing I'd like to say is it came out of our committee unanimously. Came out on the floor with a lot more votes than people thought. It's something that's going to dramatically change, and all of a sudden we're going to get large projects started. You can't do that except on an authorization bill. The last one was 10 years ago this year, 2005. We worked together at that time on that bill. It became a reality, and the very bridge that was caused the death of several people in Oklahoma City is now corrected as a result of it. That can happen in large projects. The last thing I want to mention before Barbara talks, and then of course we'll respond to questions, is what the statement from Bill Schuster over in the House. Because I've been saying all along, once we pass a bill, that the House is going to want to have a long-term bill. They all recognize the necessity for that. And you've seen his statement when he said we'll put forth a fiscally responsible long-term surface transportation bill with us and have a conference. So we're all going to be working together, and it's going to end up a success. So, Barbara?
Thank you, Jim. Well, that statement by Chairman Schuster is really music to my ears, and I've talked to Ranking Member DeFazio, and I know he wants to do it as well. The point is, we work together for the good of the country, and you know that Senator Inhofe and I don't agree on everything. But when we do agree,
they may not know that.
Well, what you may not know is we don't agree on everything, and we do agree on infrastructure. We believe it's essential. He's a leading conservative, as he often says. I'm a leading liberal in the Senate. But there's no distance between us because we understand this is the work that we have to do. And I brought this, Chairman, just to show the latest bridge collapse that occurred in our country. That's in California. And this happened a couple of weeks ago, and thank God no one was killed. But this has been a shock. We have 60,000 bridges, more than that. More than 60,000 bridges that are either obsolete, as this one was, or deficient, structurally deficient. You cannot expect the states who rely on the national program that President Eisenhower started in the 50s, you can't expect them to make these type of repairs unless they have the certainty of the funding. That's why we're so proud. We have a 6-year bill. It is fully funded for 3 years. We hope maybe when we get to work with the House, we can actually find the funds for the next 3 years. It's possible. It's very hard to come up with it, but maybe we can come up with it. But this is what I call the face of the highway bill. This is what we want to stop. And as sure as we're sitting here, and my newspapers have reported, more bridges are going to collapse. But they won't if we have certainty, if we have a strong bill. Getting to this point was not easy. It took a tremendous amount of cooperation. I want to thank Chairman Inhofe and his staff. I want to thank my staff. They became fast friends working together. I want to thank Senator McConnell and Senator Durbin. We all pushed so hard. Senator Nelson, Senator Thune. These are some of the senators that really helped us get this done. This is a huge achievement. Now, unfortunately, we have to vote for another short-term extension in another 10 minutes because the House is gone. That was their call. They left. I believe personally, I don't speak for anybody else, they should have stayed another week because there's several things they could do. One, they can write their own bill. Two, they can take up our bill. And three, they could just do a very small bill and we can get to conference. I would have preferred that because I hate the idea of another short-term extension. I'm going to vote for it in good faith today. I don't want to, but I will to show my good faith that, as my chairman said, Chairman Schuster says he will, in fact, move forward. So this is an exciting day for us. We got 65 votes at the end of the day. Is that right, Alex? We got 65 votes. And that is the Senate speaking loud and clear across party aisles. And now we're ready to work with the House and get the job done for the good of our workers, for the good of our businesses, for the good of the driving public. And with that, we'll take your questions. Why don't you recognize?
Yeah, okay.
The House has been pretty clear that it favors this idea of a tax overhaul to fund a long-term bill. How comfortable would you two be with that?
Well, I'll start off with that. You're really asking the wrong people, because I know that the chairman of the Finance Committee, and they've been working on both sides of the aisle. And I really don't want to get involved in what areas should be changed from what they've already come up with. It's tough enough coming up with a bill. And that's 75% of the product that you see came from our committee. But of course, Orrin Hatch has been working on this now for several months. So they're talking to each other right now. And so I'd rather let them go ahead and carry on with that.
Yeah, I want to
say the only thing I want to say, make sure that the media knows this. Two things. First of all, I know it's more fun to talk about things where there's discord and hate and arguing and all that. Well, you're seeing good things happening. And the other thing is, those people who criticize and are talking about it's a 6-year bill, but only paid for 3 years. I remind you, there is that solvency valve that is there only for this type of thing. It only works in the the trust fund. And so, if something happens that we are not able to find the additional funding to fund a 6-year bill, work will stop. Now that's the pressure that'll be put on all of us, because that's going to certainly encourage all of us to come forward with it, and that is going to start right away.
Right.
The other big projects can't start unless you have a long term. I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, it's fine. I think what's really key here is that Chairman Schuster's ready to get to work, and my chairman is right. The funding comes from the Ways and Means Committee. My view on the funding, which I've said all along, is I support 10 different ways to fund this. I really do, because I think it's so critical. I'm willing to do some things that, Chairman Inhofe doesn't agree with in order to get this funded. But what we were able to do in this bill that comes up with the 3 years of funding is to find some offsets that we feel we can take and feel okay about. It's not perfect. I'm sure both of us would rather do other things. But we found a sweet spot here. We found the way to pay for this bill for a full 3 years. And as far as I'm concerned, I encourage, and I've said this to my caucus, because we did have a strong majority of our Democrats today voting for this, but those who didn't feel they do want to go to international tax reform. And I said, now's the time. Go do it. Go figure it out. If it works and it can pass, I'm all for it. I'm not wedded to any particular way, because I feel this is such a critical need. How can you have a great America if you can't move goods, if you can't move people, if 60,000 plus bridges are falling down? This does not add up to a great economic power. We must do this. So Chairman Inhofe and I, we did our part, and we hope that the various committees that look at different ways of funding will come up with some more interesting ways to do this.
Yes.
Two questions. One, are you guys disappointed that Schuster and the House didn't already have a long-term bill ready? I mean, this deadline hasn't snuck up on anybody. And the other thing is, the extension you're about to vote on authorizes programs through October, but has enough funding to go into December. Are you worried that this could go into November and December?
It's kind of, personally, I'd just assume it had not gone all the way into, because that would be a temptation. In government, nothing gets done until the deadlines are there. And but we are going to do everything we can. There's no reason. We have a bill now. We've passed it. And so the House, they'll have a bill, and it's going to be very similar. There's always battering back and forth about, what they do and don't like about it. But they know that it's a very difficult thing. There's not one person over there that hasn't been through, except maybe some new House members. Let me remind you, the last time we had a semi-long-term bill, that's a 27-month bill, that I went over personally and talked to all 33 Republicans in the House T&I committee, told them, and this is significant, the conservative choice here is to have a long-term bill because of the cost of short-term extensions. They understand that. They also understand that it's our constitutional duty. As a result of that, I'm not sure just as a result of that, but after that, in a matter of days, they voted. Every one of the 33 Republicans on the T&I committee voted for it. And I anticipate this is going to happen. They're going to come up with some different ideas on a long-term bill. That's great. We'll go to conference, have a lot of fun. We'll crank something out.
I want to answer you. They started off with a 5-month bill. Now they sent us a 3-month extension with enough money. Everything still shuts down in 3 months. So I think, although I agree with my chairman, I'd be happier with a 2-month extension. That's exactly what Leader McConnell wanted to do. They did compromise from a 5-month to a 3-month, and the pressure will still be on because they have to reauthorize or everything shuts down in 3 months. And again, I think my chairman read you the fact that they want to go to conference with us, and those discussions have already started. So I feel pretty optimistic. Am I disappointed that they went home now? Yes. Frankly, if they had stayed another week, I really think we could have resolved all this. I do, because our bill took a long time, and I think we addressed all of the issues. But that's the way it is. They're going to have to explain why they took a 5.5 week break. We don't agree on this. We don't agree on this, but we don't totally agree. I believe they shouldn't have. That's how I feel. But they did, and I think what's encouraging is that Chairman Schuster put out this statement.
Yeah, you never heard anything except negative things from the House before. It's totally changed now. And they didn't have time. They didn't want to have a long-term bill. They knew we were working on one. And there's a large group of people who didn't really want to have the long-term bill now. There's a lot of them wanted a 5-month extension. I think all of you know what was motivating them. Nonetheless, they now are all in agreement over there in the leadership that they're going to have a long-term bill. We're going to go to conference. It's good news.
It is.
Senator, you said, Senator Boxer, I'm sorry, you said you would be willing to look at some of the funding proposals coming over from the House, but one of the things they keep talking about is entitlement reform as a way for transportation. Is that something you would?
No, I have said, yeah, I have said all along that we have to pay for this, not cut poor people or middle-class families. To me, that is just going to hurt the economy. But we have disagreements. That's why finding the sweet spot is difficult. And we managed to do it for the 3-year period, and we'll argue it out. But no, to me, funding transportation, hurting our families, that doesn't go together for me.
Well, of course, I don't agree with that. When you say hurting our families, you got to look in the future. You got to think about the next generation. With 20 kids and grandkids, I do that all the time.
I only have 6, but I do too. Okay.
Yeah, well, you're young. Young.
Clearly, this is a big day for the Senate, but the House came at the 11th hour, whipped out this short-term extension. Majority Leader McConnell concedes this is the path forward going into recess. Does the House have the upper hand going into negotiations in September?
No, I don't think so. I think they're going to start right away. Our staff has talked to a lot of their staff over there. They're already working. They're looking at our bill. They're looking at, and I anticipate with this running start that we have given them, that they're going to get this thing done in advance of the extension that they require. That they requested.
I do too. And I think
when they go home, they're faced with all these people. Let me tell you, the public's behind us on this. I don't care which of the 50 states you go to. They want a highway bill. They want their bridges and highways fixed. And
let me just say, the fact that they came from a 5-month extension down to a 3-month extension shows they actually did move our way. And I do think this statement that was read by my chairman is very clear that they're moving forward. And it is a fact that, frankly, we hadn't heard any of that before we did our job. So we're happy. We think just as our committee with a 20-0 vote started this process, we think this 65 vote margin, this is huge in today's world. 65 votes sends an amazing signal over there, and I'm excited about it. And by the way, I just want to say I have a great relationship with Chairman Schuster, very good working relationship with him and with Peter DeFazio, as does Senator Inhofe, and this bodes well for a conference.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Senator. This is for both of you. An element that seemed to be absent from this discussion in the past few months, I think, was discussion of a longer-term user fee or funding solution. I think most people outside the Beltway, when they think long-term, they think more than 3 or 6 years. They think of something, you know, for the foreseeable future. There was some discussion of the gas tax, but that has a lot of critics, and vehicle miles are also getting more efficient, so it would be hard to keep that as a viable solution. Do you expect that things like VMTs will get more discussion in the next few months, or do you expect that to change?
Once we passed, if you remember back when we had our '05 bill, we talked about alternatives, and we didn't do a very good job of following through and coming up with the decisions. Now, keep in mind that the president has said he would veto a bill if it increased the gas tax. So that was kind of off the table in the beginning of this thing. And you do point out something that it would not develop what it should. I can remember when the biggest problem we had with the Highway Trust Fund is we had too much money, too much surplus. Remember? Clinton came along and he took $11 billion out of it, and it took us 3 years to get it back. So those days are behind us. So I think we're going to be looking at how do you take care of that in the future.
I want to mention VMT. In our bill, there is, you want to explain it, Andrew? There is a provision to study VMT.
Future user fee alternative revenue mechanisms.
There's a study in there so we can see where we're headed. Last question, Mr. Chairman, you think?
Well,
or two more?
The vote hadn't started yet. Well, yeah, it has too.
It has.
Go ahead.
And this is a question for both of you. What is the probability of provisions for delaying positive train control as well as lowering the driving age for interstate truck drivers to 18?
Is the Commerce Committee working on that?
Yeah.
That's in the Commerce.
It's in the Commerce title, and it is being addressed. And we can hook you up with John Thune and Bill Nelson to get the exact answer in it.
Yes.
Just had a question about what was it that allowed this to happen this time as opposed to all the previous patch opportunities? What made the difference that caused this?
Perseverance.
Yeah, and a great committee, really. When you get a 20-0 vote, we were together.
And you look at
And
the
the
committee
momentum
too. We
came.
have
Yeah.
the whole spectrum of philosophy in that committee.
We go from socialist to right-wing
we do. We got one
conservative.
socialist. You probably didn't
So,
know that, did you?
Yeah, we had everybody, and I think that gave the perseverance and the momentum and the product. And I think once that happened, it basically said, this has to happen.
Yes, sir.
You still have significant opposition to some of the pay-fors, such as the reduction in the dividend rate for large member banks for the Federal Reserve. Do you have any concern that in the intervening month or so, before you all return in September, that this will give opponents opportunity essentially to mobilize?
My feeling is they're going to be busy going after other sources, and they have time to do it now. They're already working on this, and sure, it's hard to come up with anything that is going to be sellable to everybody. There's going to be opposition. The question is that they have to decide in their minds, is having a highway bill that's going to fix all these death traps that we have throughout America more important than bickering over offsets?
You say that you're talking about the House?
Mm-hmm.
And I agree with my chairman. They have the time now. Let's say they take the two and a half months to get this done. They can look at a host of pay-fors. And we know how hard it is. It wasn't our job to do it. Others did it. But we know that there was opposition to fugitive felons that touched Social Security. There was opposition to, what was that program, Hard-Hit Cities. And we had to pull back some of them. But I think the ones that remained stood the test of time. Remember, we've been at this for a couple of weeks on the floor now. It's not been anything that was jammed down senators' throats. They read everything. And the fact that they supported this bill with 65 votes, given all of the issues you folks have raised, says to me that my chairman is right when he says there is an overriding obligation here. And that is, not to have things like this happen, not to have these kind of bridge collapses, and to make sure that our construction workers and our businesses are moving forward to build this country, rebuild this country. Because if you can't, again, and I'll close this, I'm going to run down a vote. If you can't move people, if you can't efficiently, if you can't move products, your economy suffers. And if your roads are 50% in good repair, that's terrible. 50% of our roads are not in good repair. The cost to us as automobile drivers, that's why the AAA is behind our bill, and the highway users, because it costs so much money to repair your car when it's constantly going over these potholes. So I'm excited to be here with my chairman. We are really good friends. In case you don't know, we also battle one another on environment and other issues, but on this issue, we are very close allies.
Yeah,
and I want to thank you.
This is a really great day for America.
It is.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.